Okay, that's okay. So to start, my name is Cheryl Biggs. I am number 1 of 8 of Kirk and Francis Tolman, and I'll be the conductor here today. If we could go ahead and have an invocation with Nathan Tolman, that would be great to start us off.
Our Father in heaven, we're so grateful for the chance we have to gather and celebrate the life of this patriarch of ours. Bless us with a spirit of peace and comfort, and help us to feel thy love for us through one another and the love that we share as a family. We are grateful to have one another, and we love thee, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Okay, to start with, like I said, Cheryl Biggs, I'm number 1 of 8 children. And I'd like to start with the memories going on. And if you could all think of something that you can remember about my dad and share with all of us, that would be really appreciative. Especially to those that are on YouTube right now looking. We had a fast turnaround from my dad's passing to now, and not everyone was able to be here today. And so they're wanting to have your stories also. If you can participate, that would be great. To start out with, I'd like to go to our program here, and the very first picture that looks like Bing Crosby. This is the dad of my youth, and this is early 70s. And my dad was also a crooner. So I remember going to have vacations and road trips, and he would sing, and my dad didn't believe in air conditioning, so the windows would be rolled down, and he would have his sunglasses on that looked really good on him. This was before Tom Cruise. He had the Tom Cruise sunglasses on, and he would sing stuff like blackstrap molasses and the wheat germ bread. Makes you live so long you wish you were dead. You eat some yogurt and you'll be well fed. Blackstrap molasses and the wheat germ bread. So we'd go on, and he would also sing, I've been working on the railroad, but at the part where, time to blow your horn, Mom would have to say, remember, blowing goes, and not toot, because usually she had a 2-year-old, 1-year-old, or a newborn in her arms trying to sleep, and she didn't want us to toot all over the place. It was, remember to blow like this. So, and he was always the longest one blowing his breath out. And there was always a test to see if we could beat him. And Jimmy Crack Corn, I Don't Care, My Master's Gone Away. We had a little bit of a discussion about that song, and he told us about the South and slavery and all of that, and why this master's gone away, and what's up with that. But he did it in gentle terms, and he was great at giving us a lesson of life without it being a lesson, as we were running down the road, trying to keep us all from killing each other in the back seat. But as I think of my dad, I think he was a man who was a protector of me in my 50-plus years, longest running. My husband says, I'm your number 1 man. Yes, my husband's my number 1 man, but my dad's the one that's been with me the longest, man to protect me. And he was a great father. He also was a great provider of shelter and care. He had an opportunity while he was serving in one of the BYU wards. There was a council. There were two Bolivian twins who were promised by President Nixon that they would have the college of their choice, they would have the education of their choice, and President Nixon at the time would take care of it. And that was Ruth and Judith. And everyone around this table said, I'll take them, I'll take the stipend. And it got to my dad said, we won't take the stipend. Let me ask my wife, she speaks Spanish. And he went home, talked to Mom, and they decided that the stipend would be given to Ruth and Judith instead, because they were strangers in a foreign land, and these young women, 18-year-olds, needed that. And they also got jobs at BYU. So they went to BYU because they met the missionaries. And so we had lots of fun with them. They became my older sisters. And Norman is in the back there. We lost Ruth and Judith a couple of years ago. The twins died a day apart, if you can believe that. One from breast cancer and one from the effects of COVID. But we consider them family. We consider 3 other foster sisters that they cared for family. We had 7 cousins come to live with us for a while. My mom and dad always had the doors open to those who were in need for shelter and for food. So he was a great dad, and you can see on the back of this too. This corner is a good one before he lost a lot of weight. That's Mom and Dad there, but this one on the bottom corner is their engagement picture. And what a handsome couple. Mom, woo-woo, good looking, good looking. The other black and white is about 3 to 5 years later after their marriage. And then this is wedding, Valerie and Edmund's wedding. We got to see him in a tuxedo, and this is a picture from one of the families. He was a great and active dad for me growing up. I was always running around and wanting him to chase me. He would push me in a wagon or in a stroller, and I would go, faster, Daddy, faster. And I remember wanting him to go faster, and he would be going as fast as he could. And he would run around with me all the time. He would also make sure that we had family home evenings every Monday night. And if it was not the Disney at the Sarah Theater, the newest 1970s, 1980s Disney, he would make up these type of slides of pictures, and we would sit and look at old photos of his family and when we were younger. So he also was really, he was an amazing man. He was a brilliant man. He made his own how to eat an elephant video. It's not a video, I can't remember what it's called, a slideshow at the time with cassette tape. And I was so proud of him that I had him show this, how to eat an elephant, and it's always how to solve a problem. And it's always one bite at a time. But it was in cartoon context, and so the kids at my elementary school, they were able to see that also. He loved BYU, and growing up, he very much was a family man. He loved his family, and he loved the Lord. He served in the Provo Temple for 40 plus years. First in the baptistry, every Tuesday night we knew that he wouldn't get home until 9 p.m. And then when JJ graduated, he went on and worked in upstairs in the endowment sessions. And one, I want to share a story of my sister Angela, who's not able to be here. She she recollected that she and Valerie's number 4 of 8, Angela's number 6 of 8, and they were at the Wilkinson Center, and this is so my dad. They had just put down money to play pool, and he had come in and he said, okay, it's time to go, and they said, but we just paid, and they knew that they had him there because he was one to save money and to use money wisely. And so he picked up the cue stick, and he shot all of the balls in on the table. And then, like a mic drop, he softly put the pool cue down and said, it's time to go now. So they had to go. But that was Dad. That was Dad. And he's not a pool shark. It's not like he knew how to play pool, but his mathematical mind with the geometry that takes place and the physics with how strong you should push the cue to the ball, he shot all of the balls in all the right places. That was Dad. He was always surprising us. I have more that I could say, but I'm going to give the time. I'm going to have Ariel start us off, but please come up so we can hear your memories and versions of my father, so we can all get a good rounded picture of him. Thank you. Hi, I'm Ariel Louise Tolman Christensen. I'm 3rd of 8. When I was little, I knew I could count on my dad. And by that, I mean that when I was maybe 3 1/2, 4, I told him that I wanted to count on him. He said, you can count on me. And I said, no, come here, I want to count on you. And he said, what do you mean? Come here. I'd probably seen something on Sesame Street and it just sparked an idea. Anyway, he came over and he sat on the edge of my bed. And I said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All done. My dad laughed and laughed. My sister Valerie wanted to count on him too. And that was a nightly ritual for us for years until I was too old for that sort of thing. And I imagine that must have been a sad day. Or maybe it was about time, I'm not sure. But when I was little, I could count on my dad. I knew I could also always count on my dad because my dad was a hero. And he had plenty of opportunity to be heroic when we grew into teenagers, especially. I remember I started thinking of him as a really big hero when I moved to New Mexico. And I had a fairly good car, because my dad made sure that I had a fairly good car. But in the year that I lived in New Mexico, I put 100,000 miles on it, going back and forth from home. And on more than one occasion, it needed fixing. And the first person I would call was my dad. And it wouldn't matter where I was. Once it was Monticello. Another time it was actually all the way down to Albuquerque, and my dad would drop everything. On one occasion, he said, I just need to call into work and let him know to cancel my classes. And he would come down and fix my car, even if it was only filling it with coolant, which is all I needed this one time. He would come down, he would drop everything, and he would come to the rescue. And again, as a parent, I'm sure it was a privilege, but I was so thankful for a dad who was heroic that way, and also who was a mechanical genius. My dad was a mechanical genius. If he hadn't been a professor of mathematics, which is pretty impressive enough, he probably would have been a mechanic. And I could see a bunch of Tolman garages right alongside the Pep Boys and the AutoZones, because that was also another passion of his. There wasn't a problem he couldn't solve when it had to do with cars.
About the only time he ran into some issues was when the computer components came in, and and he said, I'm not going to buy the computer, the hookups and the wires, and that's a whole nother step. But give me a simple mechanical problem, that's nothing to worry about. That is just fine. We counted on him a lot to fix our bikes, fix our cars, fix everything. He was a great practical joker, and he would always say that he got this from his dad, who was also a great practical joker. One classic of ours that we still talk about is when we were younger, we liked to play Murder in the Dark, and my dad hated that game and told us we couldn't play it, so we played it on Tuesdays when he wasn't home. And my mom always had a baby in arms, and we just wouldn't tell her. We'd go downstairs, turn off all the lights, and play Murder in the Dark. One day we were playing Murder in the Dark, and we had a game with little glow chips, and we put them on our eyes and spook each other, and we were scared and spooked and kind of half on edge anyway. And then I don't even know what time it was, because we were waiting. It must have been close to 9 o'clock, because that's when Dad would be home and we had to stop. But it was before that, and so we were just underway, and all of a sudden there was this loud roar coming from everywhere. We had no idea where. It was super spooky. Cheryl gathered us all together and said, it's okay, they can't get us. Are you sure? And then there was another roar, and it was super scary, followed up by a bunch of other roars, and we all screaming, Cheryl, Lawrence, me, Valerie. We didn't let the kids that were too young come because it was too scary. But we were pretty scared. We ran up to Mom and we said, Mom, there's a monster downstairs. She said, what are you talking about? We heard roaring. It was really loud. Is Dad home? Because it might have been Dad. And she said, no, your dad hasn't come home yet. Oh my gosh. Okay, so spook level elevated. Tiptoe back downstairs, roar! Racing back up. Okay, yeah, Mom, there really is a monster downstairs. You have to see it. I don't want to see it. Besides, the baby's almost asleep. And then Dad walks in. Hi, everyone. What's up? He never let on. We said, it was you. It was you. What are you talking about? He never let on. For years, he never let on. He insisted that he wasn't home yet. Of course, it was bad. But he didn't come clean. He didn't come clean until we were well into adulthood. He said, yeah, that was really funny. Listening to you guys trying to be brave. Heading up to your mom. Yeah. My dad was musical. He played the harmonica. I have been watching this, and it was so funny. I just love to see. He was playing the harmonica, and then he laughs, and he shows you the harmonica he's playing. It's that big. It was hilarious. But I'm sure it sounded awesome because he could rock the harmonica. He was a very good harmonica player. He loved to sing. I heard him sing often. Not very often in public, but for the family. He wrote his own music. He wrote poetry. It was extremely artistic, right and left brained. The song I think I heard him sing most often was Witch Doctor, which was he and Mom's special song. As well as Box Your Glasses and all the travel songs that Cheryl had mentioned. Fantastic. He was a builder. He built onto our house. He built more of our house than the previous builder built, and he helped his dad build my grandparents' home in Idaho. I honestly don't think I can think of anything he couldn't do. He was an outdoorsman. He was the phantom. He would often find occasion to write us little notes on occasions and sign them the Phantom.
Love notes.
Love notes. Mm-hmm. Even from the Tooth Fairy. The Phantom. He was the Phantom. He was as close to a Renaissance man as I knew. I'm not sure I know of anything that he couldn't do or couldn't figure out. My son once asked me if there was anyone in the world who knew all the math, because I was telling him what a good mathematician my dad's professor. He asked if there's anyone who knew all the math, and I was going to say, no, of course not. There's a lot of math. There's some we haven't even thought of yet. But then I thought about it and thought, no, yeah, there are a few, and one of them is my dad. My dad knew all the math. And if you hadn't seen it before, and if you needed to figure it out, give him 2 weeks. He'd probably figure it out before that. I don't think any problem he had set before took him more than 2 weeks to accomplish. In fact, he had when he was getting his doctorate in mathematics, his advisor had given him a problem. It took him 2 weeks, that whole 2 weeks, so it was a tough one to figure it out. And his advisor looked at it, had to read it over 3 or 4 times before he understood what my dad had done to solve it, and advised him to wait a year because nobody would believe that he had been able to accomplish it in as little time as he was able to accomplish it. And trusting his advisor, he did. He waited a year before applying to finally get his doctorate degree, which he did. And after a year, people believed that he was able to figure it out. Not in 2 weeks, but in a year. He loved his faith. He loved his temple work. He was so excited to work on the Nauvoo temple. We were living in Chicago at the time, and it was really neat to have him there, to see him there, and to feel the spirit that he felt as well. He loved church history, and he loved service. I'm pretty sure I was his favorite. What? Because of all of the little things and ways that he found to let me know that I was his favorite. And I am
his favorite Ariel. His favorite Ariel.
You say that, but I'm actually 100% certain that he found the opportunities to let every one of us know that we were his favorite as well. But I'm just going to keep it to myself. That he was his favorite. I know I was. He will be so missed. It won't be okay without my dad. I will never not need my dad. I think is what I told him at one point. I'll never not need you. But I know he's always with us. And I know he was ready, and I know he's happy and just fine and good where he is. And I'm still going to be selfish and be sad that I'm without him, that we're without him. Love you forever, Dad, and thank you so much for being the amazing example that you are. Thanks.
Go sit up there and just wait.
Well, most people admire their fathers, and since
You're number 5.
Yeah, I'm 5 of 8. Since it's his time, I get to indulge, and I can say that my father strode this earth as a titan in my eyes. I wanted to talk specifically about his work ethic and his mental discipline. He came from a poor background of farming and sheep herding. In spite of that, within a few decades, by force of will, he became a brilliant mathematician who the government was using to create the actual equations that they needed for the work that they were doing. As kids, he I always noticed he always had a project that he was working on. He always had something planned, something that he would be doing. And usually in the summer, and he'd usually round up his sons to help him. Because the last thing he wanted to see was his sons idling away their summers, so he put us to work. I had two stories specifically that I wanted to mention just to show his mental fortitude. While he was going to school, he got involved in chess, the game of chess, competitively playing it. And he was really good. In fact, years later, with his kids, whenever we wanted to play and he had the time, he would play us. And he would let us make a game of it, but he always won. He'd never let us beat him. So but during this time when he was learning how to play, he noticed that his mind was staying on chess. When in his free time he would be thinking about chess, and he felt that it might be taking away from his schoolwork, so he just gave up chess altogether and focused on his schoolwork and only played it with us kids, I guess, much later. The last story I wanted to share was a few years ago. I don't know if you recall, we had an opioid epidemic. Doctors were incentivized to prescribe opioids. They'd get prizes, like those old subscription advertisements in the back of comic books, you know. I better be careful, there's some doctors here. But he underwent a hip replacement and found that he noticed that he was taking his pain medication out of habit and not because it hurt. And he realized that he was becoming addicted. So he stopped. He just stopped taking it. He went cold turkey. He was still teaching at BYU at the time, so he would go to school, fulfill his obligations, then come home and spend the evening and all night writhing in agony in his bed. And this he did for about 2 weeks until the withdrawal symptoms abated. So, in the midst of a countrywide opioid epidemic, my father recognized quite quickly the addiction and put a stop to it, just cold turkey, because in his mind, knowing he was addicted was a weakness he would feel in himself that he could not and would not abide. And that's the kind of mind and work ethic and person that he was. And I'm sure everybody else has other things they'd like to share about him, so I'll give the microphone up, but those were the things I wanted to share.
I'm Valerie Winters, for a big. Sometimes this past week's been difficult. I've been staying with my mother and Jason in the house just for me to be able to be where he was. I was very fortunate enough to spend a few days visiting with him before he decided to pass. And that was a special moment between he and I. We were able to talk. Well, I would yell. He would mumble, but it was special all the same. I do so many stories. With Ariel started about the counting ons and me being her younger sister. We shared a bedroom, and I had to have my own, do the same thing as Ariel got to do it. Only I had to vary it a little bit. So I would start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Cookie Monster. And he would, oh. And so Ariel started doing it too, but I was the first to do that. So we both were able to count on him. But that went through again. Into our teenage years. But there was one time that we were in church, and I recall I had met a girl, her family just got out of church, and we were just starting ours, and I decided we made friends, and she lived right close to the church house, and so I went to her house to go and play. And I thought, well, okay, it's time for me to go home. And when I walked all the way home, which wasn't too far, but when I got home, I found out that he had been out searching the neighborhoods for me, and he was crying when I finally got home. I must have been about 4 years old. That he was crying, and he just swooped me up in his arms. I said, never do that again. You're my sweetie pie, and I don't ever want to never know where you are. And even at that young age, it was very profound. And whenever I would go out as a teenager, somehow it didn't matter who I was with and what party we would end up going to. It would be a house I've never even been to. And sure enough, he tracked me down somehow, and he never told me how he did it.
Dad radar.
I know, Dad radar. And pretty soon my friends, it wasn't that they made fun of me, but there were a lot of parties I wasn't invited to, because what he would do is on the door, and they had him down perfect. Is Valerie there? Valerie, your dad's here. Does he do that? Oh, all the time. So they started to, let's not tell her about it, because then they get in trouble. It'd be like, cops are here. And as much as he was worried about me, I was the one that was the good example there, whether you guys believe it or not. I was the one dumping out my drinks they forced on me if there was a nearby plant, or if I left the party, they would follow me. But a lot of that is because my dad, and I would actually come home earlier than I should have, because I knew my dad was staying up and he'd be worried about me. And I did come back sometimes, and he'd be staying up really, really late with his Bible in his lap, and he said he would tell me, I know that you're a good kid and you're around influences, but it's
so just for him. And as a teenager, more than once, my friends came up to me and would say they had never had heard anyone, especially teenagers and early 21-year-olds, they had never heard anyone talk so highly of not just my father, but my mother too, and how much they would badmouth their parents up and down, even though they got away with murder. Always bad-mouthing of them, but if they came and it never ended that you talked the highest of anybody I've known about your parents. And believe it or not, Dad, it'd be something I never told you, but I should have. Okay, you would have been proud to know that they were scared of you, which is not a bad thing when you have lots of guys after you, and Ariel can attest to that. They took very good care of us. I'd be gone that if I broke up with a boyfriend, he always kind of knew I'd slam the door, and he would get up out of bed even if it was 1 o'clock in the morning, because we'd be up late talking, and I just, he'd get out of bed and put on his clothes and take me out and help me find a video. This is when you could go to a gas station and get videos, and we'd go to a gas station, and then he would let me pick out whatever kind of treat that I wanted, whatever, ice cream even, and he would tuck me in front of the TV, and are you okay now? And I'd be okay, just kind of cozy down. And then he would go back to bed knowing that his little girl was home, and that no matter what, I felt like even if there was no man out there they were all just, but almost, that I could always come home taken care of by my dad. And that's my, I think, favorite, because I got chocolates from a Phantom and with love notes. Even if I wasn't having a problem, you would just know that either with school or with friends, that you, I don't think I told him enough times that he was my rock. And even when I met my husband now, he was always checking in and making sure that I was all right. It was, the more and more I was able to visit with him and Mom with all our travels. I don't know who that kid is, but okay. You guys are all laughing behind me, like.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. So that's Zeke. So the funny thing about that is Zeke, my oldest grandchild, was deathly afraid of Dad.
And he pushed him away.
And would always push him away, and it was the biggest joke because Dad was just so meek and mild and loved little kids, but Zeke would have none of them. None of them.
You guys are all laughing. I'm like, all right, that was not funny. Now I get it. I didn't think I'd be able to get up here and talk. Because even
have him not being in my life is difficult to wrap my head around it. And even when I was looking for, before this, there was a time when Ariel and I and Matthew and Angela were modeling, and we only had one car at the time, and it was just me, but the one car that we had didn't work really well, and it was really having problems. But this certain date that I had with the modeling agency, there were other people there wanting to see me and interview. And this car, for whatever reason, it would work long distances only if you kept the fan on hot and on high. And so he drove me because it was extremely important for me to be there. And I even said, it's okay, Dad. The car's not working. And he said, no, you're going. So what he did is he put me in the back seat, and I kind of sequestered down on the floor, and he drove me from Provo all the way up to, do you remember where it was?
Salt Lake.
Yeah, Salt Lake somewhere. And as he was driving, I could barely stand the heat behind the seat. And I just imagine what it felt like for him to drive an hour without hot air blowing on him. I saw his legs were shaking and the car windows were down, but it was a hot day outside anyway. And I realized as I was cowering behind the seat how much love he must have had for me. I recognized how important it was for me to get to this appointment, that he went through that just to get me to where I needed to go. And it was just that kind of love he had for all of us, all 8 of us. And I feel blessed to have known this incredible man, jack of all trades, king of all trades. I mean, there was nothing he couldn't do as far as building. And Ariel had that, the professor was right, but the way I understood it was that it was a mathematical question that nobody could solve. It had been in the minds of the authorities of mathematics for so long, and nobody was able to figure it out. And once Dad finally did, his professor, I don't quite recall him saying to wait for a year, but I know that his professor was astounded and amazed because he couldn't even do it. And Dad put it together, and his professor was about to announce to the whole of the mathematic kingdom that he had solved this amazing mathematical equation correctly when everybody else failed. And unfortunately that professor passed away just before he was going to. So it's unfortunate,
And Dad kept it to himself. It wasn't published, and so that kind of bothered me that he was acclaimed, and just things like that. Sometimes he never let it get to him. He just kept on. And again, his family, when he would get home, we would all run to the top of the stairs, Daddy's home, and give him a big hug. And he told me one time that was one reason why he just kept going, even when things were rough at work or long temple hours. Just knowing that everything he was doing was for his family, and at the very end of the day, he was going to come home to his children and Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. That was a highlight. I have never, I know every little girl says that her daddy's the best, but to me, no, compared to the strength of my dad in his mind, his personal relationship with God was unbending. That was a strength to his kids too. It was just another testament to his amazing person he was, and how tender-hearted. He loved the sound of little children shrieking and playing and laughing and running up and jumping on his lap, and
Except Zeke.
Is he still crazy?
No, he loves Dad now. Yeah, he grew out of that house. He's fine now.
Yeah, he probably had little horns when he was born. Dropped him later. That's not the Antichrist. But it was so cute to see him with his kids. Well, and later on his grandkids, and how much he enjoyed them. Geez, my mind is just bursting. I can continue, but I don't know how much longer I can talk. He went on his own terms. And that's just how much of a man he was. Dad, you know I love you, and I'm gonna miss you. What a legacy he's left. And I'm happy and I'm grateful to be part of it. We still have our matriarch, and I'm grateful for her. And I'm grateful, you know, you're growing up, you realize eight kids, all going to see a family member in California. Well, yeah, California's kind of crowded anyway, but imagine when we would drive into an AM/PM gas station, grocery store, and he would have all of us go in, and we could see the dirty looks we would get from everybody, because 8 kids at this one little gas station, and they're not used to having that many kids around. But he just shrugged it off. He's got 8 kids, and as much as I was embarrassed sometimes that we were such a large family. Thinking back, I'm grateful for my brothers and sisters now so much. And their husbands and wives. It's amazing when we can all get together, which is not very often. It's just fun. It was so much fun. And there, a lot of people are just envious. I think he not only was a rock to us as his kids, but he was so influential in many people's lives. I had a friend who called her, she had just heard it, she was inconsolable. And I realized that he had how much he had helped her in her life. Thank you. I'm talking a whole lot. I don't know how much more I can say.
Do you want me to help you back?
Oh, okay.
More people than I thought. My name is Ed. I am Valerie's husband, and Kirk was my friend. Before I deliver my remarks, Francis's brother, Pete Garcia, could not be here today. He has some prepared remarks that Francis asked if I could read. I don't remember my first meeting with Kirk, but it was in the early 1960s in Albuquerque, where he was working on a PhD. He was courting my sister Frances and would come to our house in an old Chevy Corvair, the equivalent today of, say, an old Nissan Versa. Another suitor was calling. While another suitor coming to visit was stale stuff. Frances had oodles of admirers for years. Some drove motorcycles, some were love stripped. One was an engaging drama major, some were quick-witted, and some were leechers. I heard one became a priest. But few of them lasted very long. Francis was picky. And one look at Kirk, an undersized, modest man, his dress and demeanor screaming out that he was a straight arrow type and a Mormon to boot, was enough to convince me this was a mismatch not made in heaven, but had slipped through the cracks by some cosmic mistake, and it would end quickly, if not disastrously, leaving no trace in its short-lived wake. By the time I grasped that I had been profoundly wrong about this, Kirk and I enmeshed in a continuing argument about religion and philosophy. I was a non-practicing atheist and a conventional liberal, and he was a highly conservative, true-believing Mormon. Our arguments were tension-filled, passionate, and for me, challenging. They forced me to understand that he had something I did not have. In Spanish, it is called formación. That is disciplined intellectual training capable of fending off attacks. It requires exceptional effort to achieve it. If you're ever trying to argue with a Jesuit priest, you know you have encountered a formación. I had acquired no effective formación from my Catholic high school or secular college, a frustrating lapse against Kirk's steel-trap mind. The tension between us eased up considerably when we both agreed his system was a closed one and mine was open. But I suspected the term open was a euphemism for I wasn't quite ready for the mainstream. During these days in Albuquerque, he bought an old Chevy Corvair and fixed them, exchanging parts, doing body work, and in general proving he was a whiz at all this. As you heard from many of the siblings, he could fix anything. This was long before YouTube told you how to fix everything. Me, my scores for aptitude and mechanics were in the low 30s, and I marveled jealously at how quickly he would figure out and solve complicated mechanical problems with his brain and his brawn, like Ariel described. Go into Albuquerque to fix a car. In 1 or 2 afternoons, he put a platform in our garage that he could hold heavy boxes, a platform that lasted at least until a couple of years ago, so about 30, 40 years or so, 50 years, when we sold the house. While courting Frances, a part of him emerged as a kind of Walter Mitty type, sending her letters, cards, and cartoons, revealing a comical character who imagines himself to be a superhero. I think he was a superhero, as you heard from me. A legend in his own mind, he even gave this comical portion of himself a name that I have forgotten. I'm dying to know what the name is. It stood out as a funny alter ego, humanizing himself against his sometimes dour persona, a reassurance for Frances that beneath the Puritan exterior was a man with an active sense of humor, and he did have one. The term straight arrow to describe another piece of Kirk is apt in more ways than the vernacular sense of rigidly following conventional norms and authority. Kirk decided at some point before he met Frances that his life would follow an arrow-like trajectory. Before he even started a PhD, everyone knew he wanted to get a PhD and teach at BYU. At some earlier point in his life, he had an awakening, knowing what he wanted. Something totally uncommon in the Vietnam hippie days of young America during the 1960s. The arc of his life was going to be teaching at BYU and raising a family. Amazingly, like an arrow, the arc of his life followed his wishes and hit the bullseye. The job at BYU came through, and one child after another eventually visited the house in Pennsylvania Place to endure the scary tortures of Uncle Pete and Uncle David. What more could a straight arrow man hope for in life? And that's from Pete Garcia. So I thought long and hard about this moment. Kirk and I talked quite a bit about this moment, starting about a year ago. And we both promised never to speak at each other's funeral. And here I am, because we're both introverts. So I thought I would share, there seems to be a mystery among some of the family of how we were friends when we were very different and what led to this friendship. I have to take you back to when I first met Kirk, about 22 years ago or so, right? I was the daughter's boyfriend. And one day she says, you should go over to the house and you should meet my parents. And I'm in my 30s, and okay, that's different. But yeah, I will go over there. So I go over to the house, and the only one there is Frances. So there I am in a house sitting across from Frances, and she's just staring at me. Nice to meet you. In comes Kirk, right? Wearing his tan pants, his long sheep white shirt, and his straw hat. And I thought he was a college professor, but he looked more like someone who was working with his hands, right? So he sits down, and there I am. And at this point in my life, I was still in the Army. I wasn't quite a feral cat, but I wasn't quite housebroken yet either. And I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking to myself, I've been in some of the worst places on this planet. And this is harder than anything I've ever done before. You know, I have nothing in common with this entire community. You know, so, you know, I've never held a baby. I've never seen a toddler, been around a toddler. I'm the youngest of 5, but all my siblings were much older than me. And here is a husband and wife that have 8 kids and have been in the same home during most of their life. I never lived in one place more than 2 years. So we started talking, and I mentioned, and I said, well, I didn't mention, I just said it. Like, I plan to marry your daughter. And that's when Valerie walks in. So now there's 4 of us in the room. And Kirk just looks at us, and he says, cool your jets. I had no idea what that meant until much later. So I couldn't wait to leave, to be honest. Right? So I left. And then, of course, things progressed, and we got married, and I think that was probably the very first time that many of the folks in this room saw a military ceremony for a wedding, probably something very unique.
It was fun.
It was fun, yeah.
It was fun.
Angela got smacked by the sword, if I remember right.
Oh, it was, didn't you?
I think somebody did. I don't remember who it was,
What was
but.
the name?
They didn't hit her because she had a headache.
Oh, okay. But
When they
I
hit me, she said, "My ass doing?"
We could hear it across the room.
Yeah, it was loud. And that was all just tradition for my part of the world, right? And the guys were just doing what was traditional for us. But then I left the military a while later, right? About a year later. But something about Kirk stuck with me. My last assignment up in Washington State, he and I would email each other. We didn't talk a lot on the phone at this point, but we would email. And it was always around the church and his beliefs, and it was an academic discussion back and forth, right? And he finally left right before I was about to leave the military. He says, we can continue to discuss this academically, but it'll never ring true to you if you don't really think and pray about it. And I thought, it's still not quite ready for me, right? We come back to Utah, and the plan was to go back to school, finish, and get a job as soon as possible. I wasn't one to not be employed. It just wasn't in my head to do that. So as soon as we get back, I start working, and that's when the relationship started to take shape. We would have very late night conversations, almost every night, 2, 3 in the morning sometimes. And it was about a wide range of topics. Mostly it was me unloading on him about my previous experiences with the church. And I was questioning his beliefs, his system. But he just sat there, not like the previous members I dealt with. And we would talk until the wee hours of the morning every single night for some time. And over the course of time, my heart softened a bit. And his just kept opening up. In that moment in time, Kirk was my missionary. I did not want to talk to a 19-year-old kid ever again. Right? It didn't go well. Don't tell me at 19 how to live my life when you haven't even lived one yet. That's how I was. Kirk was different. He didn't teach me anything, he didn't preach anything. It was, he established himself by his way of life. He lived his values, he lived his faith throughout his entire life. And I could see this. I never met anybody like that before. So I thought there must be something more to this, so I listened quite a bit more, and we talked quite a bit more. And that eventually led to, he baptized me. And then a year and a half later, he escorted me through the temple. And so in that part of my life, Kirk was my missionary. We're not friends just yet, though. We're just really close. So then life goes on, and I'm working for a company, and it was up in Salt Lake City. And I hit the point where I was 17 years behind my peers. And so I had all the leadership skills to do anything in the company, but I didn't have the business acumen. So we decided to further our education. I finished the MBA, and I was on the precipice of thinking, should I keep going for a doctorate degree, should I not? And he was right behind Valerie. He was my second biggest advocate to do that. And I asked him why, at this point in life, you know. And he made the comment that in his life, he witnessed what education did over the long term. A lot of people think about it in the immediate future, right? They think about the student loans, and right now you hear discussions about the RO, return on investment of an education, right? But he said, don't get caught in that trap, because it pays over your lifetime. I thought I was halfway through my life, and then he said, well, no, you're not. You're only in your 30s. So I did that. And the other way I could do that financially was if we stayed with him, and why I went up to Salt Lake and went to school. Because in the program I wasn't allowed to work yet. So we did that, and the discussion started yet again until 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And then, of course, it let up a little bit because I was a little bit tired. And that's when I started to see the other side of Kirk. I witnessed in action what a provider of a family is. You heard all the siblings talk and about how he was always their rock. I can tell you without a doubt, there were no favorites.
No.
There were not. I'm sorry. There were not. He loved every one of you exactly the same, in their own unique way. He would do anything for any one of his kids, which was new to me as well, because the way I was raised, you're out of the house at 18. And so he says, even though they grow up, you never stop being a father. And people say that, but he lived it. I could literally watch what he was doing. So we would start doing things together in addition to school. We went to the BYU football games. One year it was BYU in Utah, and I tried to get him to go toilet paper the U of U campus. He wasn't ready for that yet, though. Just trying to get in the spirit of things. But he did get riled up at the games. A side that you would never see him on. It was quite fun. And we would do other things, you know. We would watch TV. We would pick controversial topics, and then we would critically think through them. I would take his side, he would take my side, and we would discuss it. Something that's absent in today's world, I think. We did that simply because it was entertaining. And we would pick a topic, anything from aliens to zebras, and we would just talk through it and discuss it. That's when I started to know Kirk is the man. I found out he, as a child, lived in California, so he became my Californian liberal, I would often call him. He'd get a chuckle out of that. But we always talked about his family that has passed on, his current family, his grandkids. I know something about all of you, so. But it was always with a high degree of confidentiality. We would never share what we talked about. So, I can tell you he worshipped you. He really did. And you were more important to him than anything, and he just felt that he didn't show that enough. He didn't say that enough. But I know he did feel that way. And, you know, as life goes on, we talked about this exact moment in time. And he wanted everyone to be weeping and wailing and crying and talking. And I was like, I don't even like going to funerals. They're for the living, they're not for the dead. So, but he said, well, then just tell the living what I meant to you. And I could tell you all kinds of things that he meant to me. You know, I've never made friends in my life. You make acquaintances because you don't know how long you're going to be around them. I've known him for 20 plus years. I can't say that I'm a good person. I can't say if I'm a bad person. But I can say I'm a better person because of Kirk. Thank you.
Well said. Thanks, Ed.
Edmund, that was beautiful. And if you hadn't done such a good job, I might not have stood up. But I figured since on behalf of the sons-in-law you did, if I was going to say anything today, this would be the spot to say it in. So you said a lot of things in there I could use as jumping off points for some thoughts I wanted to share. Let me see if I can remember a couple of them. One, I'm surprised he wouldn't TP the U with you, because I think I stole a couch with Kirk. I should even say, I think I aided and abetted Kirk stealing a couch. And so I may come back and circle that on that story. If not here, then at your house after some punch, I'll tell that story to anybody who understands. I'll do that. Good thing. I'm Andrew Christensen. I'm Mariel's husband. AJ is ours, and Rachel is either watching on YouTube
She's
right now.
right there behind you now.
Yeah, these are some great pictures. So she's either watching now or will watch this on recording. Again, many points I could build on, but thought I'd start by saying, for those of you with the Tolman family memory bingo cards, which are supposed to be handed out, I wanted to mention Friday Night Sounds Easy Pizza.
Yes.
And the family dog video, because and those are important because those were quintessential to the moment that I entered the picture in the late 80s when I showed up at BYU, and quickly Ariel crossed my path and batted her eyes, and before I knew it, like you, I was the boyfriend on the scooter, and I had that same kind of a moment in the stairwell where I met Kirk and Francis for the first time. Actually, I met them, it seems like I met them for the first time twice, because I also had that stairwell moment the first time I was back in Provo after my mission, and it had been just enough long since my mission had ended that I'd been able to grow my hair back out, and it was still BYU acceptable, but it was long, and Kirk's first words to me, seeing me back from Japan, were, "That is not a missionary haircut." And I said, no, but I'm back. I'm going back. But the Sounds Easy Pizza era and the family dog era are important to me because they define, and I think they forever will define, the way I think about my relationship with Kirk. I thought initially I was going to talk about it in terms of how opposite he and I really were, but I think that's unfair because I think at our hearts we have a lot that we're actually very not opposite about. But it does build well to saying something I think really important about Kirk that others have touched on, which is that moment in time when I was at BYU and all the years Ariel and I were dating. Ariel or someone might say after the fact that this isn't true, but I think it is true that I was at my absolute most annoying version of me that I've ever been. I was arrogant, I was cocky, I wasn't nearly as smart as I thought I was, or as witty as I thought I was, or really as anything that I thought I was. So I had a healthy confidence in myself that I hadn't yet done anything with it to make it justifiable or worthwhile. And maybe some of that confidence is what drew Ariel to me. But Kirk took it in stride, and Kirk saw through it. He didn't let it bug him. He didn't feel the need to overreact to it. But as he and I began to build what would ultimately be this 30-odd year relationship, he kind of surrounded all of that and saw the real me and talked to me as the real me and asked me questions about life that were aimed at the real core Andrew. And although I don't think I had as rich and deep and lengthy and ongoing dialogue as Edmund had with Kirk, all of those little conversations, I remember snippets of them to this day, little talking points, and each and every one of them was just a gentle bump, one direction or another, toward him helping me become a better version of myself than I would have ever would have otherwise been. And so I feel a great respect for Kirk, and a sense of honor for him and a gratitude to him for seeing through the parts of me that weren't ready to be grown up yet and embracing the core part of me that hopefully has become a worthy ongoing companion for his daughter, who I'm duty bound to say was his favorite daughter. I think it's also important because the other main thing I always think about Kirk is he gave of himself. He absolutely lived his core personal internal religion, and that was one of service. And so again, even when I was still kind of an irritating young guy, building on his expertise with cars, among other things, he gave of himself in many, many ways. One was to help Ariel's car or my first car just keep on running. And that also picks up on the other things I want to share, which is he was a remarkable blend of both faith and cynicism. I don't know, I've never known anybody with the same inherent core faith bordering into belief or certainty. But he was also incredibly cynical, and that had practical applications in a story some of you heard me tell in the last week or so. But Kirk, one time Ariel and I were trying to get our car to pass inspection or something like that. It was a kind of an old truck that was somewhat run down, but still a great car for us at that time. And the inspection station wouldn't pass it unless we paid them to replace our fuel pump. They insisted there was a problem with the fuel pump. And to be fair, there was something going on a little bit funky with the engine. And I said, well, I don't know. I said, my father-in-law's good with cars. I'll bring it back for a re-inspection sometime, but no, I'm not going to pay you to do that today. And I took the car back, and Kirk said, he kind of cocked his head and squinted with one eye. He said, there's nothing wrong with your fuel pump. Those guys just want to sell you a fuel pump. I said, well, what should we do? He said, I'll tell you what we'll do. So we pulled up to the garage, and those of you that knew the house in Provo, you'll remember that garage. And
Yeah.
that was quite a garage. It was like the TARDIS. It was bigger on the inside, right? There was everything. It was a labyrinth of mysterious objects that have been gathered over the years. The Tesseract is probably in there somewhere. So he came back out and he had some beat up old can of something and some toothbrushes and rags, and he said, here, take some of these. And we just started pouring this liquid all over the fuel pump. And we're working away at it, just shining it up and cleaning it off. And we had it looking like a brand sparkling new fuel pump straight off the rack at AutoZone. And he said, all right, take it back, tell them we replaced it. And I did. And they put out, and he said, all right, fine, you passed your inspection. But that cynicism, I've tried to keep a little bit of that all the time, just not take it face value. I don't think I will tell more about the sofa stealing story right now, but again, I can tell you we got a lot of people that want to share their thoughts. So let me just say as reverently as I can to Jason and Nathan and Matthew, you absolutely carry your father's heart and spirit inside of you and strengthen the family by doing so and your own families. And again, it's a reverent honor to be in the presence of that. And James and Ronak and Edmund, I'd like to think that Kirk's daughters chose us, foreseeing a little bit of Kirk in each of us, and I hope we can continue to nourish all of that in our relationships with his grandchildren and continue to cascade through the forward generations. The goodness that he distilled in himself. And Francis, we are here for you. And by carrying him in our hearts, he's here for you too, through us. We love you.
All right. I'm going to try to keep my voice steady. I'm terrible at funerals. It doesn't matter whose. I'm Nathan. I'm 7 of 8, second youngest. I just wanted to talk about how consistent Dad was. I had a lot of friends growing up whose family circumstances were not quite as stable as mine were blessed to be. And I attribute that fully to Dad. He was immovable. He was very consistent. He was, well, like Valerie said, he was our anchor. He was the rock. He was immovable. He didn't just believe blindly. He understood why he believed what he did. And like many of us theists, he came to understand that the gospel, what it means when we say the gospel is true, is that we have applied it to our lives and we found it to consistently produce stability and joy. I also wanted to mention that as I've been sort of pondering what I might say in this moment, what keeps coming back to me is how lucky we all were to have him for as long as we did. Not everybody gets an example like that on into their middle-aged years and older. he's got kids who are grandparents. But we had him for a long time, so we're lucky. I mean, I can't really complain that we had him for as long as we did. Gonna miss him, but he really got to stick around, and that's magnificent. And I wanted to end talking about his sense of humor, which Ariel touched on briefly. Dad's favorite kind of joke, as Ariel said, it was pranks. Anything that freaked people out but was ultimately harmless just had Dad rolling with laughter. That was his sense of humor. His dad did a lot of pranks like that. Anything to terrify people in a safe way was Dad's favorite. That's who he was. And I wanted to be brief, and I think any of us, with 8 kids, we all have a lifetime of experiences with Dad. It's just not feasible to mention everything, but I think everybody's starting to understand the sort of reliable person that he was. And I came to find out in later years that is a remarkable thing to have in a father, and we'll miss it.
I should have written something down. So, it's almost 6 months to the day since we were here last, laying Angela to rest. I wonder if the funeral home has figured out that they need to start charging us by the hour. So, I'll join the in-laws, because we all came into this family at various points. Might have been nearly 40 years ago. It might have been more recently.
Okay.
It might have been more recently. And I feel that perhaps I was the one who had what was unfortunately the most superficial relationship with Kirk. I wasn't here very often. We lived further away. I was very busy. Angela came to visit often, but we never lived here. And the kids came more frequently, and they built those relationships. But more recently, after Angela passed, we come here a lot. And when I think about why, I think that is the legacy that Kirk, I can't call him Kirk, Grandpa, left behind. It's being the patriarch. It's being the one who fills a room, and you too, with family members and children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, and friends and colleagues, and worshipers from the church that he's worked with for a long time, and builds a sense of place that everyone belongs to. For the in-laws, we were all brought into the family. We're all very lucky to have been brought into the family. And it wasn't just being lucky to be brought in as husbands, or in Julianne's case, wife. But it was being brought in as a member of a large family that gets together, whose children become best friends with each other. More than just cousins, but lifelong family. And that is such a wonderful legacy to be able to leave behind. And just one of many things that I know, now that he's in peace, that he would be proud of. And for a thing that's very fresh for me, is what it's like sitting there, hearing all these stories as a spouse, and knowing the details of all of them, and feeling the pride and the joy of all of them in an ocean of loss. So, Francis, love you. And we all love you. Thanks, Kirk.
Testing. All right. So before I start this very brief talk, let me just say that if I make you laugh, it's very unintentional. I promised someone that I would be serious. Not that I was planning on doing stand-up comedy, but anyway. And also, I apologize if I start breaking down, and I apologize if I start stuttering. Alright. So, back when we were living in the Provo house, like, a lot of things just kind of go wrong. And, like, sometimes Grandpa would come and, like, fix something. I don't remember what, probably some, like, plumbing or something. And I am a very nosy kid, so I like to, like, peek around. And it's just a miracle that you could get through that with, like, me around. I'm a very annoying kid. And also, let me just say that he was a very good man. A lot of your stories are just amazing. Like, it's kind of hard to believe that he just quit doing pills from going cold turkey. That's probably what DL in his name stands for. Legendary. Legendary Grandpa. Right here. Yeah. I have nothing more to say. The next person may come up now.
I'm Connor. I'm the oldest son of number 2, Lawrence. And I proudly bear that L as well, which should stand for legendary. Yes. It's Lawrence. It was his dad's name, it's his name, my dad's name, my name, and my son's name. I one day hope to be legendary as this before me. I've just forgotten everything I was going to talk about, which is why I wrote some stuff down. My mom was not able to be here today, so I told her I'd share some stuff for her. I'll start with that. She says, one of my favorite memories is when Lawrence and her were dating, and she and Jason were throwing a football in the upstairs living room. And my grandpa, he was Pa to me. I don't know how many other of the grandchildren also called him Pa, but he was Pa to me. Pa yelled at them to quit throwing the football around in the house. And my mom doesn't know why that was so funny to her and to Jason, but it was just so funny. And it was one of her favorite stories to tell about him. one of her other fondest memories is of making jam with him. And I'm sure many of you are aware of the bottles and bottles and bottles of jam that may or may not still be around. Or may have ended up in one of your homes. I know we still have a lot. But he taught my mom how to make jam. And that was a really good memory for her. And in honor of him, today she and my wife and my son made jam. And I don't know why jam is making me so emotional.
That's cool.
There were a couple of other stories that I was supposed to share as well. Touching on the family dog, one of the scenes in this short Spielberg clip, Spielberg, right? Yeah. They take their dog to be trained to be an attack dog, and the lady at the facility says that they'll turn him into a sniveling, snarling, white hot ball of canine terror. And one day my sister was really grumpy, and my mom asked her, "Are you grumpy?" "No." "Are you mad?" "No." "Are you sniveling?" "No. I'm a white hot ball of canine terror." And my mom proceeded to call Pa right after that, and he was so proud that Allie was a white hot ball of canine terror. One of my memories of, I'll share a few of my memories, mostly of the house, but also kind of Pa's character. There was always a bowl of candy. I may be stealing my sister's thunder here, but one of the times we went over to the house, we opened up the front door and Allie said, "I smell candy." That was another one my mom wanted me to share. But I always remember his scriptures were always out on the kitchen table and open. And it didn't really mean a whole lot to me as a kid, but it does now. That he was always, in his scriptures, he was always trying to commune with God in some way. A few memories I have of what my dad has told me of him. Anytime my dad had a spiritual question, or a question related to the gospel, he would call his dad. And he always had an answer, and he always was able to calm whatever fear or question or whatever that my dad had. One of my dad's other fondest memories that he told me about was replacing an engine in a car, and I don't know what car it was. Maybe you guys remember the siblings, but my dad replaced an engine in a car. I'll try to be brief with these, but I have a few other memories of my grandpa's sense of humor, kind of calling back to the lion monster in the basement story. My brother and I, being little kids, kind of brats, would go around the house and find vents, and we drop stuff in the vents, and that didn't make him very happy. And he and my dad both a couple of times had us pull off the vents and try to reach down in there and fish out whatever it was that we were dropping in there. Well, one time he got the bright idea to, as we were trying to reach down in there, well, no, let me back up a little bit. He said, as we were putting stuff in the vents, "Don't put that in there, there's lions in the vents." Lions live in there. And of course, we didn't believe him. They're vents, right? Well, we dropped stuff in there, and then, of course, we had to pull the vent cover off and reach our hand down in. Well, as we were getting ready to reach our hands down in, he snuck off to the other room and through the other vent. Roar! Oh my gosh. My brother and I were terrified. Of course, no harm, but we were absolutely terrified, and we avoided the vents at all costs from that day forward, to the point where we wouldn't watch a movie in the kitchen with anybody until somebody was on a pillow. I think it was Aunt Valerie offered to put a pillow on the vent and sit on it so the lions wouldn't come get us, and then it was okay and we could go and watch the movie. But I'm grateful to have known him and grateful for his example in my life. And I hope to one day live up to be even a fraction of the man that he was. And to do honor to the name of his that I bear.
I know you guys are ready to go. So I'm Cheryl's husband, James, for those of you who don't know me. Those of you watching, I'm a superstar. I'm just kidding, because I married Cheryl, that's why. And of all the amazing stories that have come up tonight, I'm grateful I have a few different ones. Some things that some of you may not know. First, Kirk is a remarkable man, and I grew up in a loud family. I'm calm these days, but when Cheryl and I first started dating, and I got to meet Kirk, by the way, it was not on the stairwell. I got to sit down alone in a room with him, no Francis to intermediate. And I got to share with him my intentions. First I have to share this so that you will understand. My intentions were pretty normal. I was a 25-year-old man looking for a woman. And I have to tell you this too, because it's really important. Of all the things you've heard about Kirk, Francis is a complete balance to him. And we need to pay honor to you tonight too. She's a wonderful mother-in-law. And if you look at a marriage that lasted nearly 61 years, that didn't happen by chance. That takes a tremendous amount of love and discipline from both sides, not just one. And I want to express my love to you because this is a difficult time. Kirk is off playing. He's doing all the things he wished he could do for the last 30 years as we get older. And he's thrilled to be with Lawrence and Angela and his parents. And he's thrilled to be with many others that he holds dear in his heart. We all know how much Kirk cared about family, so there's 3 things I want to share with you. One, early in Cheryl and my marriage, we would visit the house frequently. Thank heavens for Sounds Easy Pizza, Burger King burgers, which I'm not sure how we're alive today from the number we ate. But I would often come over to the house and I would find Kirk grading his papers from BYU. Now, anybody who's been to college is going to question that because there's a testing center at BYU, there's a testing center at the University of Utah. In fact, there's a testing center in every university in the country. What on earth was he doing grading papers? So I asked him, I'm like, why are you doing this? Why aren't you just giving the tests and having the testing center administer them? And I will never forget his response. He said, because I won't know if they really understand. And that was a tremendous lesson of understanding how much he cared. Not just about people, but he cared about learning and cared about people understanding. One day we came over, and Cheryl was doing something, I don't even remember. I played with Jason, I played with Nathan, and I played with Matt, and I think I hurt all three of them that day, so I had to go in another room. Because I was louder than the entire family put together. And I went into the room to talk to Kirk. He was at the kitchen table with the scriptures, as you all know, laying there on the table, and a stack of tests that were all graded. And I go, what are you doing? He goes, well, I'm going through to make sure they're all right. I said, well, the scores are already on there. He said, yeah. He said, sometimes I make mistakes. So I check this 2 and 3 times, and I go, 2 or 3 times, and he confessed to me that he was dyslexic. And I was amazed and marveled at the discipline that he had to do that work again and again to make sure it was done right. And I think that's a testament to his life. And as I sit here today, there's a couple of experiences that have been on my mind ever since I found out that Kirk had passed. Cheryl and I had gone to the temple, and Kirk had started working as one of the coordinators for temple endowment sessions. For any of you who don't know what an endowment session is, it's a part of learning more about God and how we can be like Him. It's the best way I can explain it. And we went to the temple that night, and we went in to sit down in what's called a session. And he came out as the coordinator. And Cheryl and I got to kneel at the altar and go through that session with him. I never realized how much that would affect me. At the time, I didn't realize how much that would create a bond between us. Father, daughter, son-in-law, and how much that's like God, how God works with us. And so I want to express to Kirk my gratitude for being a great father-in-law. I want to express my gratitude to Francis for being a great mother-in-law. We have great fun. We poke each other all the time. Used to drive Kirk nuts. So he would play pranks. Mamacita and I played pranks on him. And we would poke each other until he'd go, no fighting, no biting. No biting, no biting. Yes, you've all heard that. We did it for fun. But he knew. He knew we did. And so I'm grateful for the example that he has created in a family with Francis, of how important it is to embrace everyone, to include everyone, to accept everyone. And I express my love to him and to you, Francis.
Hello, I'm Jacqueline, and I'm his daughter and Cheryl's daughter as well. For me, I did not get these same experiences, unfortunately. He did not tell me he's dyslexic. He certainly did not steal a couch with me, unfortunately. I wish he did. He was not my friend, and he was just my grandpa. He didn't play pranks on me. Most of the conversations I'd had with him consisted of, oh my, oh, and then he'd laugh, or you all know the laugh he'd do. But that's kind of the great thing about it too, is we all have a different perspective of him. For me, he was my grandfather, and the one classic thing he'd always do, especially when I was younger, because I'm the youngest, and the closest relative sibling was a brother, and you know how older brothers are with younger sisters. I'd cry, and he'd look at me and he'd go, "Don't smile." And of course, being a little 5-year-old, I'd start to smile, and I'd be angry because it worked, and I couldn't be sad. Like, no, Grandpa, let me be mad. But for most of you here, he was your grandfather, at least from what I see. For some of you, he was your father or your father-in-law. For those of you, he was your uncle. For one of you, he was the love of your life. For others, he was a great-grandfather. For his sisters, he was a younger brother. And for his parents, he was their baby. And I think he's very happy where he is right now, because a lot of what I also remember is the grief encased around him. We would not be able to talk about Lawrence without him breaking down in tears, and we'd have to change the topic because he was getting really heavy. And with Angela's passing, that was very tough on him as well. It's been tough on all of us. But I imagine him doing that classic laugh he did, but imagine just 10 times happier right now, because he's with the people he loves. He's with his friends. He's with his family, his daughter, his son, his sisters, his parents, his cousins, and he's happy. And I'm happy too, because he was like a legend to me and my friends. You know, he was the jam guy. We were tooling around in the garage one time, they're like, "Why do you have all of this jam?" "Oh, my grandpa made it." "Your grandpa made it? Like, is that his hobby? How old is he?" I think at the time he was like 87, but like 87? Not even my great-grandparents are that old. What is his secret? They were all convinced the jam had like this secret elixir of immortality. And I think it does. I mean, he truly did live a long and precious life. And this thought in my head keeps on just reoccurring. It goes, there was happiness after me, but there was happiness because of me. And I feel like that is definitely a great motto for him, because we're all happy because of him. Okay, I'll leave with that remark.
As it's been said before, I met Kirk at the University of New Mexico. I was going to school there. And I met him at a meeting where all the Mormons were meeting. I would meet for lunch, and they would talk to each other. They'd have a little program, and you could bring a friend who might be interested. And Margie Tucker, a good friend of mine, decided to ask me to come with her, and I went, of course. While I was there, I noticed they had a little program. Somebody spoke, and they had a little song, and then everybody ate, and everybody wanted to know more about me. I didn't particularly notice anybody standing out, but I started going regularly, and Kirk was there. I started noticing that he was there, and he once asked me out, and I said, "All right," and I went, and we dated. When he asked me to marry him. I wasn't ready to get married. I was still going to school and I did not see myself as a wife yet. So I said, maybe. Now, there had been many, many other men ask me to marry them, and I had never said maybe. I always said no. And a very strong no, don't, it won't happen. So the maybe kept him going. He kept asking me out, I kept going. And another big part of it was my mother. My mother loved Kirk. She loved the way he courted me. She loved the way he treated me, and she liked the way he came and picked me up for school every morning. And she would talk to me about him, and she recommended that I look at him very closely and think about it. So around his birthday in July, he was leaving me at the door after watching a movie or going to some program the church had. He asked me, this was his custom, because every time he left me, he would ask me to marry him, and I said, okay, I will. And he said, okay, and he turned around and walked back to the car, and then he stopped. I turned around and said, what? This was after about a year of asking me. So my mother was quite a hero in championing him, and I'm very happy about it. But my father also, when he came to know Kirk, was very happy, thought I had done a very good job of choosing a husband.
No smiling. No smiling. That's one of my favorite memories of my grandfather growing up. So I am my grandfather's favorite, Catherine. I am the original grandchild, the oldest, and I'm the oldest of the oldest daughter. And in fact, I am so old, you see me in a lot of these pictures where the rest of the family is still growing up, and I've often been mistaken for being their child as well. And that's okay, because we all kind of look very similar. My grandfather was an honorable man. I think that's many qualities that he's had. Many different qualities that have been mentioned of him, and he always kept his word. So it is my honor to briefly describe his life. We all very much miss him, and will continue to miss him. He was born to Lawrence and Zina Tolman, the fourth and only son of that couple in a granary in Middle Utah. A granary of all places, which is where they were living as they built their house. So he spent his youth in the mid-regions of Utah until his father found a job as a welder and moved the family to Bell, which is a city in Long Beach, which is where his father worked as a welder during World War II. his parents became concerned about the effect of California was having on their children. So his father found a job and they moved to Idaho in the Twin Falls area. And that is where my grandfather, from the age of 12, grew up until he left on his mission to the Great Lakes states. My grandfather was a speedster. As a teenager, he got a job at a auto parts store and learned how to, little by little, by asking questions of all the mechanics that came in, learned how to repair and build cars and engines, to the point that he built his own cars and would race these cars in the back streets of rural Idaho and on the freeways. And he loved to recount one story where he actually gave a Hudson, I forget the model at the time, but it was the Premier's sports model, racing model car. He gave a Hudson the run for its money with his little home-built engine car. And he did claim that he could get his cars up to 150 miles an hour, which is pretty darn impressive for the 50s. He decided to serve a mission, sold his precious cars, and served a mission. And during his mission, he served in many cities that had universities. And through that engagement with many educated people, he came to understand the importance of an education. So he had never considered going to college before that, and after that he realized how important that was and set his mind on going to college. So that's what he did. He went to BYU. He got his undergraduate and master's at BYU in mathematics. And I remember asking him when I was young why he chose mathematics. And here's one of his little secrets, because I asked him this while I was trying to choose. I initially thought I was going to go and do mathematics like him, and he said, well, I got all A's in math and B's in chemistry, so I decided to do math instead. It's like, okay, Grandpa, that's great. I chose chemistry. He then, at that point in time, when he was going through studies, there was no internet. There really wasn't much in the way of any computers. So he sent off letters to all the universities in order to apply for a PhD program, and heard back from a number of them, and decided to go to the University of New Mexico because they offered him full scholarship and pay, which is how he ended up there. And we'll be forever, and I was grateful he did. Because that's where he met Grandma. He was about 28 years old at the time, 29 when they met, and 30 when they got married. And you wouldn't know it if you'd known him in his later years, but he was quite the, Casanova wasn't the word I would describe. Used to describe him, but he was very good with the ladies, actually. And we've all talked about Grandma being really good with the men, but he was actually really good with the ladies, and he dated a lot of women. I asked him. He told me all the stories. He did. Many women. And they were never right. They were never right. He was very, very connected with the spirit. And he said there were a couple he got kind of close. But the spirit had always told him, no, this is not the right person, until he met Grandma at the University of New Mexico at an institute. And that's when he had that zing. It was always one of my favorite stories to ask him to tell me. Because it was abnormal at that time for someone to go so long unmarried. He's quite old. And he just was waiting the right person, and he found her, and she is the love of his life and the love of his eternity. And you could also recognize it by the aura, because he had a story where he was walking at the University of New Mexico walking on the sidewalk, and he saw someone that looked like Grandma from behind. So he was coming up from behind to like grab her and kind of like scare her and get her. And he stopped right before he did because he realized it wasn't you, by the aura around her. And faithful and honorable man that he was. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. So he, as an honorable man, like I said, always kept to his covenants and kept the commitments that he had made, even if they were many years ago. So while he was studying mathematics at BYU, he actually worked for an aerospace Department of Defense company called Hercules, which has now been absorbed into other companies. And he worked for them for a summer and worked on confidential work. And I always begged him to tell me what he worked on, because I really wanted to know what my grandfather's contribution had been. And he described how he had helped solve problems, but always just how he had helped solve those problems and nothing really detailed. And until the very end, by golly, none of us could ever get any of these stories out of him. He would never tell us what he had worked on. He would always keep those promises that he had made. And his family was, his God and his family were always the most important things to him. Always. It was the thing he always looked forward to coming back to. It was the thing he loved being. Always loved being around, as you notice many of these pictures of babies and small children in them. They were all his progeny. And we have gotten far. All of us are educated. All of us have had opportunity. And that's not something that you would expect from a man who had been born in a granary in Ponyville, Utah. But he is and was a brilliant man. A man full of love. A man that, by golly, we're going to miss. And yes, Connor, I'm going to miss jamming with Grandpa. I very much enjoyed jamming with him. Thank you.
Would anyone else like the opportunity? We'll go ahead and close. I didn't bring my. You sing the closing prayer, Ariel. Ariel, let's go ahead and close the meeting. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this wonderful life that has been such a big part of ours. Thank you that we can all be here to celebrate Lawrence Kirk Tolman, his family, friends, nieces, nephews. Thank you so much. For the example that we carry with us always, and we ask that he may be happy and always at your side, and also with us and where he needs to be as we continue onward. Bless us this evening that we may all go to our destination safely and visit with each other and continue. And in the love and respect that we have for this, for your amazing son. We ask these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I wanted to also thank the Relief Society and the War Members for being here, and also for the food that they brought. It has been a big help since we haven't.
No, I don't think so. I think we're just going to keep it here since it's not. It's
in our
going to be
crate.
cold storage.
So, special thank you to all of those who have looked after my mother and my father also, as he was still alive. I want to say thank you. Thank you.
Maybe the one I would ask for a picture of me and Papa Kirk. Would I be able to get that or like get a text or something? Yeah.
I can text it to you if you want.
Okay. Yes.
You have to ask them. Okay. Okay.